welcome to the spoilers discussion for Smile. We reviewed this movie last Friday, and we are here to do the spoilers discussion for Smile. And why don't we go back to once again saying our overall thoughts of this movie before we go into the spoilers.
I mean, obviously, I think we both liked it a lot more than our third member of the team when we reviewed Smile last week. I gave it an 8.5. It was a really enjoyable movie. There was a lot of great moments in it, and the key point to a horror movie is that it was really scary, and the story was good enough in my mind. I had some issues with the ending a little bit, but overall, it was a great Halloween movie to see in October, and it was probably the best horror film I've seen in many years.
Yeah, this movie really did kind of blow me away. I mean, it was really good. I mean, horror movie-wise, it's one of the best I've seen. I was trying to think about the top horror movies. There's a lot of good ones. I was just watching The Conjuring on the TV, and it's obviously a classic. But this one has just so much good stuff about it. Like I said in the review, you can go back and watch that review. It's excellent. There's so many great scares, and it's up there with one of the best horror movies. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was suspense-filled the entire time, and there are so many good moments to talk about in spoilers, which is why we're going to get into this with the spoilers. And should we just talk about the overall plot first, since it's spoiler-filled?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, the storyline of the movie essentially follows the main lead of the movie, not Joy, but Rose. I guess a psychiatrist at some psychiatric ward that just kind of works with patients that are definitely out there and having some psychological mental issues, and it's kind of like part of the job. So like at the very beginning does lead into like kind of something that is followed up at the very end, relating to the main character of Rose, but which kind of that scene definitely when I first saw like what does this have to do with anything, but then it does come back. But basically, what gets into the main storyline here is she's in a psychiatric ward, and a patient that she's talking to is obviously dealing with this Smile demon, which we get to say that it is a demon in this movie, which is something that I think we do enjoy these movies that have a demon as the villain, and it's not just some kind of curse.
It's clear cut.
Yeah, like the storyline made sense to us, and basically what happens is the first patient that you see in the trailer, I think she's on the main poster, I'm pretty sure, the one that cuts her neck with the shard of glass, basically passes on the demon, and the demon basically, as you find out that we'll get into later on in the spoilers discussion, is the demon passes over to the next person through whoever witnesses a suicide happening. The trauma, and it does seem to utilize the trauma of whatever person it's possessing to its advantage. And I don't know if that's just by chance or because obviously that's where we'll get into more details in a second. But basically, that patient passes the demon into Rose. And then from there on out, the rest of the movie is her dealing with this demon and obviously seeing things that no one else can see, which is kind of hinted at in that first scene in the psychiatric ward when she's saying things are happening and no one's believing her. We'll get into the scene specifically, scene by scene, but that's really the storyline is her dealing with the demon, is like trying to fully possess her, and that's really the main gist of the storyline up until the end, which we'll get into later.
Yeah, that's the main plot of the movie. It's some stuff isn't clear, like you said, about exactly how the process happens. It's not perfect. This isn't a perfect science because it's a made-up movie. But yeah, basically the trauma is how it chases at, or how it gets another person. It's interesting with the end because basically you see the character you were talking about that dies. Basically you just see that ending like every other character, but it's not until the main character in this movie that kind of tries to do something different. And that's where the plot kind of gets thrown around. She's actually almost figuring something out. She's obviously you find out in the movie. Yeah. She doesn't figure it out.
Well,
but she kind of does.
Yeah, really, she does.
I'm just going to the best scares. Like,
the best scares. Then we'll talk about the ending at the very end.
We'll start from the beginning.
So the very beginning, obviously, we just talked about that. We've already kind of hinted at it, but we've already kind of hit on it. Was when she's talking to the patient and she stands up and she turns around and she has a shard of glass, cuts her neck, and that scene was actually done in a way that actually wasn't as. See, my worry with this movie, once again, going back to other movies that do stuff like that, over the top gore, over the top just scenes happening. I got that vibe from one trailer. I was like, dang, I'm not excited anymore. And they actually did it still in a really good way. The scene, she cuts her face, and then her laying in the pool of blood, smiling, definitely was scary to me.
But actually, before that, it starts out with you seeing like a dead girl on a bed, which that's what I was going to say. Even from the first second in this movie, it starts out with
the very beginning.
Yeah. Like, I just, even from the beginning of this movie, I wanted to point out that, like, the creepy atmosphere in this movie started then. And there's so many movies where the beginning starts out good and, like, you think, oh, this is going to be an amazing movie. I have rarely ever seen a movie that starts out that creepy and then maintains that level of creepiness for the whole movie. And that's what I felt. It kept it the entire movie, in my opinion. There's some points where it might, some, like, seconds of this movie that maybe there wasn't a scary scene. But from that moment, the creepy atmosphere was set in, and that's how I felt the entire time.
Can we pause this?
Why?
I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's fine.
This would be a terrible review. I have to go to the bathroom the whole time. We're back.
I kept it recording.
Whole time?
So, we were talking about the beginning was creepy, carried throughout. You talked about the initial scene with Sosie Bacon as our main lead.
Do we want to keep going scene by scene, or should we just go bounce back and forth?
That's what I was saying. Go to the scariest scenes. Like I can think of two of the scariest scenes right now. So I'm gonna say two small scary scenes right now. The first scary one that stood out to me the most is when the stuff starts happening. And this movie doesn't really mess around that much. Like, basically, the traumatic scene happens.
Yeah.
There's some slow stuff. It starts out scary, slow, traumatic scene, slow part, and then she gets home, like, takes a shower, looks in the back room, boom, there's a scary scene. Like, immediately, and the first scene is a scene that doesn't, it's not a jump scare, it's not a cheap, like, cat jumping out. It's literally just she looks in the shadows and sees something smiling back at her. And it was such a terrifying scene.
Inside.
Like, so she looks in, like, the kitchen area, and she sees something smiling, staring at her. It's kind of faint. You really can't tell what exactly it is. It's a person, obviously.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. And I remember the crowd was just like, I heard so many people talking in the crowd. Scary, terrifying scene right there.
Yeah.
And she like breaks a glass or something, and that's how the scene ends.
It.
But a terrifying, memorable scene just right off the bat, first 10 minutes in the movie.
Yeah, that's one there that I feel like is not utilized enough in horror films. It reminded me of like a Conjuring level scare with, it's not a jump scare. It's just a kind of a slow build.
Yeah.
Like it's those scenes that are silent that I think are the scariest. Now, obviously, the jump scares make it you to jump the most, but I think the ones that last with you longer are those ones that are like that scene where all you saw was someone's face like hunched down in the corner. I'm assuming that was the girl that at the beginning, maybe.
I don't know.
I didn't really get a good look at her, so I mean, you can't really say for sure. But that girl did see her a lot in this movie pop up in scenes, which makes sense because that would be the trauma. It's the girl that dies early on in the movie because of a glass, and you see her a few times, and it might have been her hunched down in the corner. But that was definitely, in my opinion, one of the scariest scenes in the movie. Yeah, Caitlin Stacey. After that, the boyfriend character is what he steps in. He's obviously at first very concerned for the girl, for Rose, and eventually he just kind of is like, "You're just turning psycho. Like, I'm getting out of here." And he does kind of bail out in some ways. But then the next scariest scene.
Well, I do want to touch on that one point that, like, it is kind of understandable the Trevor character about like why the way he acts is pretty realistic. I mean, you think about the stuff that happens in this movie. I mean, yeah, he kind of is not exactly the best like boyfriend character for this girl that's going through this stuff. But from his standpoint, there's a lot of messed up stuff going on. She does have a messed up job, so you'd have to understand that. But especially when like the cat is killed and she pulls the cat out of she wraps the cat up in the friggin' box, and I mean, like, that stuff would be very weird for a person about marrying. I mean,
when that scene first happened, I was thinking like, did it actually happen, or was that just part of an act? But the demon actually did put the dead cat in the box for her sister's son's birthday party. Was when that scene happened, and that's right before the trailer shot scene of the thumbnail of this video, where the sister comes back outside and the head comes down, which obviously the trailer gave that one away, but it was still a great scare and a good creative thing. I've never seen that before in a theater. Have you ever seen someone's head spin down? I've never seen that before in my life. So
the trailer did give it away. That would have been a really good scare if they wouldn't have shown that, but it was still funny to hear the crowd react.
Yeah. Now, the scenes that I think one thing, just to hit on two scenes in particular that they with the use of jump scare, because jump scares can be done right in a good way. And in my opinion, there's two scenes at least in this movie that I'm thinking of that did it the correct way. The first one's the one that we'll talk about right now, that made us jump the most, was
that one.
When the doctor scene. So basically, but Rose just found out from a guy that had this demon inside him, and he was somehow able to get it to stop possessing him and went to somebody else. And you find out that if you murder somebody else and someone witnesses that murder, then the demon passes on to that person. You don't have it anymore. So she was thinking, you think she goes into the psychiatric ward after she was told to leave for a week and not come back, just due to the fact that she was obviously seeing this demon. And in their eyes, they thought she was just losing her mind. But you see her go in, and there's the trailer shot old man guy who he's smiling in that room. And this scene isn't particular where this happens, but she goes in and she basically murders this guy with her boss character standing there and watching it. I'm like, oh my god, is this actually happening right now? And then all of a sudden, the boss character starts to rip his face off, and you actually get a look at this demon for the first time. And at first, I'm like, is this just some weird shot? But then it actually was the demon showing himself for a second.
Yeah, it was a foreshadowing.
Yeah, but then it jumps back, and this is where what I was getting into was then she's in her car thinking about going in and doing this, so it didn't actually happen yet. And the doctor character's talking to her, and we all kind of relax. It's like this is the conversation scene. And all of a sudden, the guy that she thought she murdered in her vision, all of a sudden just pops up. Like, I don't even know if he was in the window. I'm not even sure if he was even in the window. It was just they just cut to a shot of that.
No, it looked like he was just standing outside the car.
Well, yeah, no, he was just there with blood coming out of his mouth, smiling, and that got everyone to jump.
Everyone jumped.
It's such a quick one too. Like it's not like maybe a second, maybe not even a second.
You put your guard down when it's broad daylight, and then in this movie manages to scare the crap out of you, even in broad daylight. Which is major credit.
Yeah, right that one was probably the best jump scare. The next one that I think is an underrated jump scare.
Before we go on to that scene where you see her killing the guy. Now, what was that? Because that's something we need to clarify. I don't know if the director did or not. Was that her thinking about what was going to happen, or was that just the movie's way of showing us what would have happened if she took that choice?
No.
How would she have known it was going to rip his face off?
That's not what was going to happen. That was just her thinking about it, and then that happened because obviously someone tried that and murdered somebody, and that didn't happen. Like it went to somebody else, so and it happened twice.
So she was contemplating doing that.
The Robert Talley character in America, and then also happened to somebody in Brazil. Is that where the other demon? They found out that someone murdered like their neighbor, and the neighbor's husband or neighbor's wife saw it, and that he or she got possessed.
So that's basically just her contemplating, like, I was either going to do this or something else, and then
that was just her thinking about it play out. And then the other jump scare that I think is underrated in my mind was when she goes to visit this one character who is the wife of someone who her husband got this demon and committed and died shortly after that, and she takes him upstairs to his bedroom or the upstairs attic area where he was doing paintings, and there's a lot of really creepy paintings he had drawn. But this jump scare here kind of caught me off guard, where she describes like when I saw his face when they brought me in to identify him, and it just cuts to this guy's face with his jaw like broken off sideways. That was pretty scary to me, and that was kind of a jump scare too. But it was done well, where it's like it's a justified jump scare. Like, you should be scared by seeing someone's face like that.
I swear, there was one point in this movie I jumped and there wasn't even a jump scare. That's how on edge I was in this movie. So I'll come back to that one. But the one I was thinking of is when the Sosie Bacon character... So Rose is talking on the phone, and she's looking out the window, and you see this figure really far away just standing there. I think there's like a baby carriage next to it. But this character is just standing there like a mile away, and there was just something really disturbing about that to me. And it's in broad daylight once again, but seeing this character standing there, you can't really identify their face. It just looked so creepy to me. And that's one of the scenes I remember the most, is just her looking out on the phone. She's kind of distracted. And then you see the character just standing there from far away. The blinds close. And then I wasn't sure the next minute whether she was going to pop up in the room or not. So I was just on edge this whole movie. And that's something that someone explained the best is like when like a bomb exploding, like the actual bomb exploding isn't scary, but the waiting for it, not knowing when it's going to explode is what's scary. And this movie does that very well, not knowing when the jump scares are going to be. And then I just wanted to cover the one thing before we go on to the next one is there's a point when Rose is talking to Joel, and Joel's looking through like all the forensic files, you know? And there's a point where his face is blurry, and I literally jumped in my seat because I thought they were cutting to a shot of him smiling. I was like so on edge. I don't know why I jumped. It's, you know, when she's like going through all the footage of the guy like dying with the blades to his chest, and then like for some reason I thought the camera was panning to just show a shot of him smiling as she looks up. I don't know why I jumped, but it just, I think goes to show you how this movie just had me so on edge the entire time.
There's a lot of footage of when Joel is breaking down the demon. He's like going past each person that was dying and seeing how they were dying, and each footage, each like example mentioned that the person right before they died was smiling. And the one gas station footage of a guy who's walking over to get these like head trimmers or whatever, he's like smiling, grabs it, walks over to a lady at the gas pump, cuts his neck open, and he dies. And just seeing that play out, that scene wasn't that scary in my mind, but still just to see it play out on the security camera is pretty creepy. And then also there's a shot of the old lady, that old lady who saw him who saw him die. The footage of her dead was kind of creepy too. Like her face was like beaten in or something with like a brick or something. I forgot how she died, but her face was definitely messed up. Her eyes were like cut out or something like that happened.
Right.
And just seeing the footage of that in such a realistic way was definitely pretty creepy. And just seeing the trail follow along in place was definitely scary. And then I would also say there's a scene where Rose, and this is one complaint I have of the movie, was how many times Rose was in a pitch black house knowing this stuff was going on. I would have every TV on. And I don't think there was one TV in his house. As nice as his house was.
If this is the 20th century, how's there not a TV in there?
And she's in the kitchen looking at the recording of the main girl who first died in the beginning of the movie, Caitlin Staley, Laura Weaver. And she keeps listening to the recording of her saying it was smiling, it smiles at me or something like that. And she kept listening to it, and then right before I kept waiting for something to happen. And I guess you hear the demon breathing.
I don't know what that scene was.
You heard breathing, and all of a sudden she's right behind her, and then that was a jump scare too there. And then
I was squinting and covering my ears, so I couldn't hear what he was saying.
And freaking, well, no, it was. No, I thought I thought the last time she was gonna play it was gonna say her name, but then all of a sudden it was literally you heard like breathing, so you actually heard the demon in the room at the time.
Yeah, I still didn't know what that was. I was like my right ear was covered, my eyes were squinted that I wasn't even like.
And there was also there was some stuff that it may not be the first time ever done in a scary movie or like in a short film, but the way it was executed was very fresh to me, and it worked well in the movie. Was a couple times when the demon's giving like an alternate Thanos like reality where when the house gets broken into, for some reason when houses are getting broken into like Insidious, it's just scary when when someone breaks in your house, that's a scary, demon or not. Like, that shouldn't happen. Yeah. So she's running around thinking someone's in the house, and all of a sudden she calls the number of the security company, and she's like, is anyone in the house? She's like, no. And she's like, are you sure? And then everyone in the theater was like making sounds, and she's like, turn around, and then the Predator turn around line. And
that wasn't really that suspicious of a thing, though, to say, is it?
The way she said, are you sure?
I mean...
It was almost in a SpongeBob, like, no, freaking no food line, but the way that was done executed pretty well.
It says turn around, right? It says look behind you.
Or look behind you, turn around.
And that was scary. When it said that, the whole crowd was like...
And then when she turned around, nothing was really there, and then the phone rang again, and she answered, and it was actually real this time, and the cops showed up. So that was done well, and then also the scene with their psychiatrist, Norton maybe.
No.
She's there talking to him, and she was already looking creepy anyway before she even was like possessed. But then she's there talking to her at the very end, and all of a sudden her phone starts ringing, and it's literally the doctor. She realizes the real doctor's not there, and it's the demon in front of her. And
that was
when
crazy.
She walked over, and then there was like drool dripping out of her mouth with like laughing. That was done pretty well. And there's stuff that was executed well enough that worked really, really well in my mind. That's hard to do and hard to pull off. Like having someone like her not in demon form look scary is hard to do, and they did it pretty well. So those two use scenes of using like tricking the character was done very well, and also the acting, like we mentioned in the non-spoiler review, was done great by Rose. You really believed her character went from being like the top of her class, successful person, great life, and by the end she's like biting her fingernails off, which is disgusting.
She has to carry the movie, for sure.
She did a great job. I mean, everyone did good. Who did bad in this movie? I mean,
but no, obviously Sosie Bacon, the actress, carried the movie and was really good. Sold the movie and had to, because she's the main character and she's on screen for most of this movie. But I did think it's really interesting how they make the main character kind of figure out stuff, and she's on this kind of like quest where she goes to other people for help, but she's put in a spot to where she really can't go near anyone else, because basically if she goes near someone else, she puts them at risk of them being taken by the thing. So it's constantly like she has to be alone, but she has to figure it out herself, and she really can't get help from anyone else, because at a certain point they say the when Joel and her are talking, they say the longest someone's been, lived is like a week or 4 days. And so she knows at a certain point, like, this is it. I can't go near anyone else because no one's made it past this point. So she ends up trying something. But even when that psychiatrist shows up at her house, this is the scene. I'm going all over the place. The psychiatrist showed up at the house. It was really the demon. But she puts her in a tough spot. The demon was really smart here. She said, if you don't let me in, then I'll call the cops. And then if the cops show up, then they would literally give them a person to possess. So she literally had to let her in, or else the cops would show up and then it would pass on. And she wouldn't be alone anymore. So that was a really like smart move by the demon there. And it was tough to read that at the time. But do we want to go into the
end now? Because, I mean, we really covered every scene, basically, for the most part. I mean, there was a scene where she goes to talk to that person who had taken care of the demon and got him to pass over, and he realizes the demon's right. And the person in front of me is like, get her the hell away from him.
If you were able to somehow escape that, he's in jail for freaking the rest of his life. Do you think he really wants to deal with that again? The cool thing is, from the end of this movie, like we're going to talk about, these characters are so terrified of this thing, and for good reason, because once you see it, imagining what they saw, you'd know why they were acting that way.
Yeah.
Because this thing is flipping messed up.
Right. So this is where, at the very end, she tries something new, she isolates it, and tries to just drive in the middle of nowhere to go in a spot where there's no other human beings, which is what it needs is someone to pass over.
Yeah.
Which actually was a good plan. Now, I will disagree with her decision to go into her old house where her most traumatic moment of her life happened. Like, that's probably the dumbest thing to do.
Like, I don't know why she did that.
Like, you went to a spot where the most traumatic moment of your life happened, which is probably what this demon wants. If she would have gone to once again, if she would have gone on a boat and just went to the ocean, that might have been a better option. But obviously, it's a movie. So she goes to her old house, which is just in the middle of the woods, an old cabin, which looks creepy before she even goes in there.
Damp cabin.
And basically, the demon utilizes her mom's body, and she lets her have a good conversation with, which to me, this is where there's a little bit, the ending got a little bit, not necessarily got sloppy, but there were some things I didn't like about it as far as it ending super dark, and also the demon's almost giving her a chance to like overcome her trauma, which she did.
She's just trying to mess.
But to be honest, though, she did overcome her trauma in her mind, and if it wasn't for Joel showing up, I think she would have actually beaten this thing. Unless the demon was just this overpowered, which the demon is overpowered, and it's just doing a Gamora Thanos scene, letting her kill him just to think she killed him, and then not really, because she's talking to her mom, then all of a sudden it backs into the corner, and then it's this tall, really giant woman-looking thing, which
Resident Evil.
This is what the Resident Evil 7 connection was in my non-spoiler reviews. I don't know if I got put in there or not. Where there's the mom character in the family, the Baker family, who's like a spider, long legs, like the long hair, and it looked just like that. It wasn't exactly like that, but it's the closest thing I've seen on the big screen for a movie. And the way the size of her walking in was huge. And I was definitely shocked when at first Rose was able to break her arm and throw fire on it. And maybe that was like a foreshadow to her burning in a few minutes later on after that. And then you think she overcomes it, and Joel picks her up. She goes to Joel's house, and you think those two are going to get together and she's going to live there. And all of a sudden, I knew it wasn't going to end like that. And Joel's like smiling, and then all of a sudden what happened was Joel showed up at the cabin and was there. And she runs back in the cabin, locks the door, and then the demon's still there. And then that's when you see her turn into the main demon form, which is like this kind of like vein, bloody, like giant looking hunched over creature that maybe it's got a name that we didn't catch. But it was, I'm not sure they even call it a name, but it was a creepy thing. And it's like hunched over, and it's like stretching her mouth open. At this point, she's gone, and he's stretching her mouth open all the way. And it looks like he's gonna like go into her mouth, and it kind of cuts away before that happens. And it is like, and when it opened its mouth, it did actually give me a Deadlight vibe with the mouths. And I think there was a bunch of smiles in its mouth, but it was only on screen for like a couple seconds. And then Joel goes in, and you see Rose throw gasoline or something all over her. And she's still in her own form, and she's smiling, and then she throws a torch or a match, and she catches on fire, and then it ends with her basically the demon now attaching to Joel from what we know. But now that Joel knows what's going on, that's why I want a sequel to this movie, because Joel knows the path and how to stop it now. Maybe he's able to overcome it. If you do a second one, you got to overcome it and find a way to defeat this thing.
It kind of sucks because the main character would be dead, but yeah, at the same time, I just think because we got to wrap this up, but the main thing is, I think she had it beat. If Joel wouldn't have shown up, it basically would have been, in my opinion, the Doctor Strange Dormammu thing, to where Doctor Strange couldn't beat Dormammu, but he basically set him in a trap to where he's like, you can't do anything here. We're all alone. You can't do crap. So like,
Demon, I'm here to bargain with you.
she basically would have been like, you can't do anything. We're all alone. There's no one to spread your trauma to. So F you. You can't do anything. And basically, this thing would have been trapped. It would have been like, you either leave or I'm staying here the rest of my life. And that would have been a great ending. And it also would have been good for the movie's like overall point. If it's like overcoming trauma, but then the movie says basically you can't avoid the trauma.
Or
like, that would have been a lot better message for the movie too. But like I said, it was a scary ending, and for that point, it was still scary.
If you want to end it off on a more positive note, here's how you do it. Like kind of what you just said, but you end it on a way where it's still a very dark ending, but in a more positive way for the main character. That because you're as a movie fan, you're rooting for the main character to overcome whatever the challenge is, no matter what the movie is. So here's what you could have done. What you just said, if it's just her in that house, and then she torments her for a second with being her mom, like in a tall form, but then she can't actually kill her because no one's there to go to the next person. Then it ends with her smiling at the demon, and the demon deals with a smiling person back to the demon, and the demon's like, F. And then it's all hunched over in the corner like, this is BS. And then it just ends in like a psychotic, weird way. Character, like, as a fan, like, okay, it might be super scary, but I'm not happy. I'm not going to leave the theater happy that a kid or anybody, now in this case, an adult woman, is defeated by a demon, and there's no way to combat it. I mean, you have to give a way to combat it, and you can still end it in ways where it's not completely gone, but there has to be a way to contain it.
In my opinion, I do think there was a way to beat it. I think she had a way. It just didn't end that way. I still wish it would have ended that way. I thought this was an excellent movie. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I want to go see it again. I may go see it again. Excellent horror movie. I definitely recommend you go see it. Hopefully we didn't miss any of the spoilers. But maybe I'll be bringing this movie up in some kind of matchup video. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
there's also
Demon Madness.
No end credit scenes. So if you see this movie after this, you can stick around if you want and talk about way to beat the demon like we did with Max. But yeah. So anyways, though, it was definitely a good movie, great horror movie, and maybe top 5 of our lifetime, to be honest. I mean, like
definitely
I said,
top 10.
There's not many that we've watched that are that good. So very good movie, and would recommend it for you to go check it out if you're 18 or over. And yeah, let us know in the comments what you thought about it. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you guys on the next video. Bye, guys.